and welcome to our tutorial and behind the scenes look at stop motion animation. I wanted to show you guys how I created my fish animation. First thing we need to do is have the right tools, which is what you see in front of you. I've got something to animate in the back here. I've got my digital video camera. You can also use a still digital camera as well. And I've got my firewire cord. I've got a little mini tripod, but that's optional. I've also got some lights set up. I have my computer and some kind of animation program. So we're going to be using iStopmotion, which is a very inexpensive, easy to use program, and we'll get more into that in a minute. Now I need to get my camera set up, and my camera, interestingly enough, is not going to actually be recording. At no time will I need to hit the record button. All I'm using my camera for is for its lens. So remember, always check your lens for any kind of dirt or fingerprints before you get started. And then you're going to want to hook your camera up to your computer using your cord. Could be a USB or firewire cord. And once you have hooked this up, then you can attach a tripod if you would like to. I always like to use tripods because they help me to have some really nice camera angles, allow me to get really creative with my shots, and also allow me to fix things down so I don't accidentally bump my camera into the wrong spot. So now I'm going to set up my shot. Now I have my camera turned on, ready to go and set up for animating. I have my firewire cord plugged into my computer. I'm about ready to animate, except I need to do one more thing. I need to get my software set up for animation. So for this demonstration and in this class, we use iStopmotion for our animation. So first thing, when you open up iStopmotion, you will see this screen. First thing you want to do is make sure that you change the name to your name so you don't get your project confused with another person's, and then whatever the title is. I'm just going to call this animation test. Now remember, in our class you do share a computer with other students, so be sure to always name your projects so other people don't record their work over yours. This has happened. So remember not only to save it as a specific name, but also remember where you are saving it. I'm going to save mine to my desktop, and I have my preset set up here. The frame rate is going to be 15 frames per second. FPS is frames per second, and a frame is just a still picture. So with animation, we take one picture at a time and then show them in a very fast sequence. That's actually how all movies, television shows, any kind of video you see, that's how it works. So remember, there's 15 frames or pictures in 1 second. Let's create this. Okay, and let me open up my screen a little bit bigger here. So the first thing is I need to make sure that my camera is actually set up and this software is reading it. So over here under source, right now it's trying to get the video feed from my eyesight. So you can animate that way, but in our case we want to use our video camera, which is the ZR960. So if you aren't seeing any images and you just have this saying none, or maybe it's the eyesight, make sure that your camera is turned on and plugged into the computer. If any of those things aren't happening, then this won't work. So make sure you check that. And one little troubleshooting tip is if you're not seeing your camera here and it just says none, make sure that your cord is actually fully plugged in on both ends, and sometimes the cord can be defective. So in our class we have some really old cords. You may have to switch that out. Alright, let's get started. Now what we see in front of us is a live video feed. So here is my character I'm going to animate, and I'm about ready to start. So down here we have our capture button. So we're basically capturing a still picture one at a time. And I can just click this button, or a shortcut is just to hit the space bar. So whenever I start animating, I typically want to do a few frames of just whatever we're seeing. I don't want the animation to start right away. This is called an establishing shot. So especially if you have an interesting background or things going on, you really want your audience to take a look at that before the action just starts. So I usually like to take about 10 pictures just to get started. So I'm going to do about a full second here. And one little tip with iStopmotion, I can hit this one at a time, but if I want multiple pictures, I can also just hit the number key. So I could hit the number 4 and it will automatically take 4 pictures. It will only do that from 1 through 4. You can't go above that. So now that I have my establishing pictures set up, now I can start to animate. One thing I want you guys to notice here is this section that says overlay. If I move this slider over towards the camera icon, that is my live video feed. If I move it over the other direction, this is stuff I've recently recorded, so you actually can't see my hand that I have in front right now. So this is just a way to kind of see what you've already done. So now if I move this to the center and I start to move my character, you will notice a little ghost frame. So that just allows you to have some kind of reference point. So if you accidentally bump your set, bump your character, or knock your camera over, something like that, you always can find where you started. So this can be very helpful. Next, let's just start going. I'm going to take one picture at a time and move my character in very specific increments. I try and do kind of even movements if I'm just showing my character moving around the screen. So I can use my overlay to help me, but I also have something else enabled. So as you guys see this going from one step to the next, you will notice that there's actually a whole bunch of images, ghost images behind this character. And what I have enabled is over here. It's under the view section. I have onion skinning turned on. And this is a really helpful tool for animators. So if I have onion skinning on, you can set how many layers it will show, but quite literally, just like the layers of an onion, it will show you basically like the path that your character has taken. And especially if you have more than one character that you're animating, this can be very helpful. So you can remember what direction they're going, and you always have these reference points. So I really recommend that. There's a few other options here that you may want to use. Grid can be helpful as well. It kind of sets a grid up if you want to move on a straight line. But in my case, I usually use the onion skinning option. So I'm just going to move my character around a little bit. Now I want you guys to notice that I'm doing very small increments, and they're pretty much at the exact same spacing. And that just creates a really nice, smooth, slow movement for my character. But if I want to make my character speed up, I might want to have the increments be a little bit bigger. So if you want your character to go slow and smooth, small increments are the way to go. But if you want your character to move fast, then you want to do big increments. It might look a little bit choppy, but if I were to move my character here a big increment forward like that, it's going to look like he's going a lot faster. Always remember to take a picture after your hand is out of the way, especially if you're working with a partner. If that accidentally happens and you get your hand in the way there, it's really easy to delete that frame. And let's just take a look at this. At any time while I'm animating, I can rewind and play what I've done. And notice how it started out slow and kind of sped up since I went from smaller movements, smaller gaps to bigger gaps. So now I've got my guy moving. I can quickly play this by just pressing the letter P. So I don't always have to press this button. I can just press the letter P and it will automatically go. And that's a really good way to kind of see how your work is flowing, make sure everything looks right. And at any time you can go over here and select an individual image and delete it, or even copy it and paste it. So if I click on it, it highlights, and then I can either delete it by going up to Edit and Delete. The shortcut key is Command Delete. They don't let you just hit the delete key so you don't accidentally delete your work. So you have to hit Command Delete or come up here. Notice you can also copy and paste and replace. So this can actually be really helpful if you want your character to maybe just sit there for a little bit or do some repeating movement. I can highlight multiple frames down here and I can copy and paste them to create some other kinds of effects. The other thing I want to show you guys is how to do compositing. So this is one other aspect of this program. And this is why my background is just this kind of boring, bright neon green. I normally would build a whole background with some little props and things to make the environment look very realistic, but I wanted to use the green screen effect. So basically, we use green, this neon green, because it's typically a color that people don't wear or have on their skin, or characters like the one we have here. We don't want the color to match. So really, you can have any color in the background as long as it's very, very different and one solid color. You also need to be very careful about shadows. So when you have your lighting set up, try to have as minimal shadow effect. And if I come over here, this has foreground effects, so I can set up some foreground effects, like make it look like, let's just pick this one. This is the bullseye. So I can set foreground, and then it will put my character behind it. Of course, as you see here, I would have to plan for that to make sure that my character fits in the right area. So I'm going to remove my foreground, and I'm going to go to backgrounds. There's a whole bunch of backgrounds here. These are presets. If you want more options, you have to get the upgrade. Clicking on Sunken Ship, set this is my background. And here we go. And it looks a little bit choppy right now, but actually in the final version, this will look a lot better. This is actually just a preview, not the final rendering. And if the color is not matching up, you can always go here to pick color, and it will let you pick a certain area of your background. So if you're having any problems with this not showing up very well, then you can always go here. So now I can start animating with my new background, because as you guys see here, even though it shows it, when I press play, it doesn't show the background. So you have to set your background first if that's what you want. So now I can go ahead and start animating my character in his new environment. So I hope you've learned a few things about stop motion animation. The best way to become an expert at this is just to do it. Practice, play, experiment. Anything that you can imagine, you can create with animation. Have fun, and I look forward to seeing the amazing work you guys will be doing in class.